You want their respect? No. Let's not lie to ourselves. You want their fear. Not the kind that makes them run, but the kind that makes them freeze when you walk in. The kind of fear that clutches their throat in silence. The kind that wraps around the room like smoke, invisible but impossible to ignore. You don't want their applause. You don't want their compliments. You want the air to shift when you enter. You want their stomachs to twist, just a little, because your presence changed the temperature of the room. No words, no smile, no handshake, no need. You don't ask for validation. You don't beg to be seen. You walk in with nothing, not even a look, and still, they feel you. You see, most people, they talk. They talk to be noticed. They talk to fill the silence. They talk because they're afraid of what might happen if they stop. But you're about to become the one who speaks with nothing at all. Because silence is a scream. And yours will echo in their minds long after you've left the room. You won't need to prove anything. You won't need to argue, defend, explain, or react. Because silence, when it's intentional, becomes undeniable power, unshakable, uncontrollable, unpredictable. And people fear what they can't predict. Imagine this. You enter a room. Your face is calm, eyes unreadable, shoulders relaxed but uninviting. You say nothing, but somehow they panic. Why? Because they don't know what's coming. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know what you're capable of. And the unknown? That's where real power lives. So no, you don't want their respect. Because respect is often just politeness in disguise. You want to make them watch what they say around you. You want them to hesitate, not because you're angry, but because you're silent. Silence isn't weakness. It's dominance, perfected, and you're about to master it. They told you the secret to being respected was to speak up. They said, use your voice. Be bold. Be seen. Let them hear you. They told you the world would listen, that if you just explained yourself enough, showed enough heart, poured enough truth into your words, people would understand. That they would value you, that they would honor you. But let's be honest, how's that been working for you? You've spoken, you've explained, you've justified, you've opened your heart. And what did it get you? Nothing. Because here's the truth they never told you. No one's really listening, not the way you thought they would. They nod, they smile, they pretend to care. But inside, they're just waiting for their turn to speak. They're not absorbing your truth. They're not valuing your honesty. They're distracted, self-absorbed, calculating how your words can serve them, not how they can understand you. Everyone is talking. No one is hearing. Everyone is performing. No one is connecting. You see, in this world, the loudest voices are often the weakest minds. The most talkative are the most insecure. The ones who constantly seek to explain themselves. They're not powerful. They're desperate. The louder they speak, the weaker they become. The more they talk, the more they reveal their fear of being ignored. And that's what they want from you, too, to be like them. Loud, reactive, desperate for attention, afraid of being unseen. They want you to play their game. They want you to jump in and swim in the same shallow waters of endless words, opinions, debates, noise. They trained you to believe that value comes from visibility, that if you just say it right, if you explain it the right way, someone out there will get it, and then, finally, you'll be enough. But you were lied to. They sold you a false map, drew a treasure chest where there was none, and left you chasing a horizon that never arrives. Because real power doesn't come from noise. Real power is felt, not heard. Real presence is recognized before a word leaves your mouth. Think about the people who truly move rooms, the ones who leave others on edge without saying anything. The ones who walk in and shift the energy, not because they're loud, but because they carry weight. Weight doesn't make sound. It bends the space around it. You've been made to believe that your words will protect you, that if you say the right thing, you'll be accepted, that if you explain your pain, you'll be understood, that if you express your intentions, they won't be misjudged. But again, how's that working out? They don't hear your pain. They weaponize it. They don't appreciate your honesty. They exploit it. They don't recognize your vulnerability as strength. They see it as a weak point to press on. That's the game. And you've been playing it backwards. They told you to speak your truth, but they never told you the truth about speaking. Let me tell you what they didn't. The people you're trying to reach, they're not looking for truth. The more you talk, the more ammunition you hand them. Every word is a breadcrumb, and they're not following it to understand you. They're following it to control you. That's why silence is so terrifying to them. Because silence offers no handle, no grip. It's smooth, cold, and unreadable. And when people can't read you, they panic. Because now the control is gone. Now you're in charge, not because you're louder, but because you're harder to access. You've been speaking in rooms full of people who already made up their minds about you. They don't want your truth. They want your reaction. And when you stop giving it to them, when you go silent, when you pull all that energy inward instead of outward, that's when your power begins. They lied to you when they said speak up to be heard. What they meant was, speak up so we can dissect you. Speak up so we can judge you. Speak up so we can break you. But silence, they can't break that. Because silence doesn't offer terms. It doesn't ask for understanding. It doesn't need approval. Silence stands tall. Silence looks them in the eye and says, "You'll figure it out," and walks away. So here's the truth. They lied to you. Words don't make you powerful. Silence does. They told you silence was emptiness, that it meant nothing, that it was weakness, that if you didn't speak, you'd be forgotten. But what they didn't tell you is that silence is the most misunderstood form of power on this earth. Silence is not the absence of sound, it's the presence of control. It's the stillness before the storm. It's the invisible force that pulls eyes toward you without effort. It's the unknown, and the unknown is what people fear most. Because here's the truth. Noise is predictable. Silence is not. People know what to do with words. They can interrupt them, argue with them, twist them, ignore them. But when you go quiet, when you say nothing, you give them nothing to grab on to, nothing to fight, nothing to twist, and so they panic. Because your silence becomes a mirror, and in that reflection, they don't see you, they see themselves. Their doubts, their insecurities, their guilt, the questions they never wanted to ask, the answers they've been afraid to face. That's what silence really is. A mirror, turned inward, aimed outward. Let's be clear, silence is not retreat. It's not cowardice. It's not giving up. It's strategy. It's psychological warfare. It's spiritual confidence that says, I don't owe you a reaction. I don't owe you a word. You ever been in a room where no one says a word, but you feel like something's about to explode? That's not tension. That's power. That's the kind of energy that changes everything without making a sound. Stillness isn't peace. It's pressure. And pressure always breaks the weak. Because silence? It forces people to fill in the blanks. They start building stories in their heads. Is he angry? Is she planning something? What is he thinking? And the more you give them nothing, the more they invent everything. That's where your leverage is, in the space between your breath and your next move, where they wait for something you never give them. Let me paint you a picture. A man walks into a room. He doesn't speak, doesn't look around, doesn't laugh, doesn't smile. He just stands, his face blank, his posture effortless, his eyes unreadable. And yet, everyone in the room feels him. They shift in their seats. They lower their voices. They sense something they can't define. He hasn't said a word. And already, he owns the room. That is silence, weaponized. That's what it means to become undeniable without ever opening your mouth. Most people don't get that, because most people are addicted to attention. They can't bear the thought of being unseen, unheard, unread. They crave noise, not because they're strong, but because they're terrified of being forgotten. But you're not like them. You're not here to be heard. You're here to be felt. Silence is a loaded gun without a safety. Stillness is the earthquake before the blast. The quietest man in the room is usually the one in control. Because silence doesn't just carry weight, it becomes the weight pressing on others. It makes people doubt their own words, their own moves, their own value. You'll notice this. The moment you stop talking, they start. They'll over-explain. They'll overreact. They'll try to fill the void with useless noise just to feel in control again. Let them. Let them run their mouths. Let them perform. Because the louder they get, the more obvious their fear becomes. Silence isn't about being passive. It's about being dangerous in stillness. It's about choosing your moment instead of chasing theirs. That's what makes they won't be able to read you. They won't be able to prepare for you. And that's when you become the most dangerous presence in the room. So don't just be quiet. Be intentional. Be unreadable. Be unforgettable. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of possibility, mystery, and power. And those who master it, they don't chase attention, they command respect, and they harvest fear. They'll never admit it. They'll smile. They'll talk louder. They'll fill the room with jokes, opinions, questions, anything. But inside, they're shaking. Because silence isn't just uncomfortable to them, it's unbearable. Why? Because silence removes the illusion of control. Most people walk through life addicted to certainty. They need to know what's happening. They need to know what others are thinking. They need to know what comes next. Because when they know, they feel safe. But silence shatters that safety. It strips away their assumptions. It removes the script they've memorized their whole lives, the one that tells them how to behave, how to manipulate, how to win. Silence introduces the unknown, and the unknown is where their fear lives. People don't fear what they understand. They fear what they can't predict. And when you go silent, truly silent, they don't know what you're thinking. They don't know how you'll respond. They don't know if you're planning, or if you've already decided. So they fill the space. They overtalk. They overshare. They start to unravel piece by piece, exposing their nervousness without even realizing it. They'll talk more, nervously, filling the void. That's where they expose themselves. You'll see it in real time. They'll laugh too hard at something unfunny. They'll start asking questions no one needed the answer to. They'll fidget. Their eyes will shift. And their voice? It'll carry that slight tremble of someone trying too hard to be comfortable. All because you didn't give them what they expected. A reaction, a reply, a cue, anything. But you gave them silence. You gave them a blank canvas. And their mind, now completely insecure, starts to paint the worst-case scenario. Is he judging me? Is she angry? What does that look mean? Why isn't he saying anything? Did I say something wrong? Suddenly, you own the room, not because you spoke, but because they lost their ability to predict your next move. You see, the average person isn't emotionally strong. They walk around with masks, scripts, and fake confidence, built entirely on external validation. They need smiles. They need agreement. They need applause. And when those things disappear, they do too. That's why silence, the calm one, the one who doesn't flinch, the one who doesn't explain, the one who lets everyone else drown in their own need to be seen. You'll notice how fast their masks start to slip, how quick their fake confidence turns to anxiety, how suddenly their energy shifts from power to panic. Because now, you're in control. They thought power meant being the loudest. They thought strength came from speaking first. They thought dominance was about presence and posture. But true control, true power is quiet, cold, still, calculated. Let them talk. Let them laugh. Let them try to dominate the space. You stay still. You stay unreadable. Because when people don't know your next move, they can't defend against it. When they don't know what you're thinking, they start thinking for you, and in the process, reveal their own weaknesses. You don't control people by shouting. You control them by making them guess. They won't know if you're calm or calculating. Let them wonder. Is he plotting? Is she planning to walk away? What does that silence mean? Let their uncertainty consume them. Because while they're trying to decode you, they're not thinking clearly. They're reacting. They're guessing. And guessing leads to mistakes. Now listen carefully. This doesn't just apply to strangers or enemies. It applies to everyone, co-workers, friends, lovers, family. Because every person is driven by one basic human need, certainty. And when you take that away, they're unarmed, defenseless, shaken. So next time they try to pull you into an argument, stay silent. When someone throws shade, don't flinch. When a room goes cold the moment you walk in, let it stay cold, because you're not here to make them comfortable. You're here to be remembered. And no one remembers the noise. They remember the one who said nothing and left the entire room shaking. You've understood the philosophy. You've tasted the silence. But now, it's time to use it. Silence isn't just a concept. It's a weapon. And like any weapon, it must be sharpened, studied, and mastered. This is where you stop being passive and start being dangerous. Because silence, when used with intent, becomes a force more effective than rage, more precise than argument, and more feared than physical power. Let's break it down. They insult you. Look. Blink. Walk away. People are addicted to reactions. They feed off drama. When they throw shade, they want a show. When they challenge you, they want a fight. When they lie about you, they want your rage. Don't give it to them. Give them nothing. No raised voice, no wounded pride, no angry rebuttal, just calm stillness. Why? Because when you react emotionally, you surrender control. You give them the steering wheel, and you tell them, yes, I care what you think. Yes, you can touch me. But when you stay neutral, cold even, you rip the script away from them. They don't know what to do with your silence. It makes them feel powerless. It makes them look small. Because while they flail, you remain in complete control. That's power. You don't need words to command a room. In fact, words are often the weakest tool. Real power is physical, non-verbal, unconscious. Stand straight, shoulders down, back relaxed. Hold eye contact longer than what's comfortable, not aggressive, just still. Don't fidget, don't shift, don't show tension. Let your posture say what your mouth never needs to. I'm not afraid, I'm not interested, I'm not available. People read body language faster than they interpret words. And when your body says, I own this moment, they will feel it before they understand it. They'll lower their voice. They'll second-guess their tone. They'll subconsciously submit, even if they pretend not to. The one who speaks first loses leverage. In negotiation, in conflict, in group settings, there's a universal truth. He who speaks first loses power. Why? Because silence is pressure, and most people can't stand it. So they speak. They overshare. They fill the air with noise and reveal far too much. Let them. You wait. Let them pour it all out. Let them no twitch, no smirk, no raised eyebrow, no visible anger, no visible joy. Just stillness. You don't need to intimidate. Your calmness does it for you. Because the blank stare makes people question everything. Is he mad? Is she judging me? Do they know something I don't? That's the beauty of mystery. They will fill in the blanks with their own fears. And the more you show nothing, the more they project everything. This one will be hard, because we're raised to explain ourselves, to justify our decisions, to defend our actions, to earn approval. But every time you do, you lower yourself. When you explain yourself to people who don't respect you, you're handing them the power to validate you. And if they can validate you, they can invalidate you too. Stop talking. Make peace with being misunderstood. Let them create whatever version of you they want in their heads. Let them assume. Let them twist. Because in your silence, you send the message. Your opinion of me is irrelevant. I do not need to be understood. I do not need to be liked. I do not need your permission. That is terrifying to people who depend on approval to feel real. The most dangerous man or woman in the room is the one no one can figure out. The one who doesn't speak unless absolutely necessary. The one who watches more than they talk. The one who listens, not to respond, but to study. Because when they don't know what you're thinking, they don't know what you're planning. And when they don't know what you're planning, they prepare for everything. That's exhausting. That's disarming. And that's exactly where you want them. Let them sit with it. Let them lose sleep, trying to read your silence like a language they were never taught. Because while they chase answers, you're moving in silence. There will be moments where someone tries to provoke you publicly, where they say something sharp, just loud enough for others to hear. They want a scene. They want a reaction. They want you on the defensive. Don't give them the satisfaction. Look them in the eye. Say nothing. Then walk away. No clap back. No insult. No, I'll show you. Just cold, unshaken silence. Because in that moment, the crowd doesn't admire the loudest voice. They admire the one who doesn't flinch. The one who says more by saying nothing at all. Let them wonder. Let them question. But you'll see it. You'll sense the truth behind their eyes, the resentment, the envy, the betrayal they'll never confess. And in that moment, you'll be tempted to do what you've always done, to talk, to defend, to correct the narrative, to clear the air, to say something, anything, that reminds them you're not what they whispered about. But not this time. This time, you stay silent, because now you know. Silence in a room of enemies is not weakness, it's strategy. You don't need to perform for people who already made up their minds about you. You don't need to explain yourself to the ones who never tried to understand you in the first place. And you especially don't need to give your energy to those who plotted against you when your back was turned. Let them keep their smirks. Let them laugh too loud. Let them pretend you're invisible. But when you sit there, calm, blank-faced, saying nothing, the room will shift. The power will shift. Because here's the part they weren't prepared for. They expected you to react. They wanted you to break. They wanted anger, tears, apologies, anything. Instead, you give them stillness, and that stillness will haunt them. Let me paint you a scene. A man walks into a conference room. 3 people already seated, 2 of them laughing quietly. Their voices dip the second he enters. No one acknowledges him. No one offers a seat. He doesn't ask. He doesn't speak. He sits down, calm, focused, stoic. Their laughter falters. The air tightens. They exchange quick glances, trying to read his mood, but they can't, because his face reveals nothing. His silence screams everything. He's not angry. He's not emotional. He's not broken. He's in control. And they hate it. They hate it because silence exposes them. It reminds them they have no real power over him. It forces them to confront the fact that he's still here, and they couldn't stop him. His silence turns their laughter into panic. This is how you move in rooms of enemies. You don't try to fit in. You don't try to be liked. You don't try to make peace. You exist unapologetically, quietly, unmoved. Because silence doesn't just protect your energy. It becomes your armor. It becomes your message. It becomes your dominance. Think about it. In a world where everyone is trying to speak louder, you'll stand out by speaking less. In a room where everyone is performing, your stillness. And if they try to bait you, don't bite. If they throw jabs, don't flinch. If they gossip, mock, or provoke, don't move. Because the second you respond, the power balance tips. The second you react, you become predictable. But silence? Silence keeps them guessing. And the more they guess, the more they reveal themselves, their fear, their insecurity, their desperation to drag you back into the noise. Don't go back. You left that version of you behind, the one who needed to be heard to feel powerful. Now you know better. Now you let your presence speak. Now you let your energy carry weight. Now, you walk into rooms of enemies and let them feel everything you don't say. Because silence in those rooms is no longer survival, it's supremacy. And once they realize they can't shake you, once they see that their tactics no longer work, once they understand that you don't just walk into that room, you own it. In silence. That's when you've already won. Everyone tells you to speak up, to fight back, to clap back, to stand your ground by getting loud, getting hid, getting even. They say confrontation is strength. They say the louder you are, the more powerful you become. But let's tell the truth. Loudness is not power. It's almost always insecurity in disguise. The one who shouts the most in the room. They're not commanding attention. They're begging for it. Desperate to feel important. Desperate to feel seen. Look at me. Hear me. Understand me. They'll call it confidence. But real confidence doesn't beg to be noticed. Real power doesn't need to be announced. It doesn't need to be explained. It doesn't need a mic, a podium, or a room full of witnesses. Real power just enters, and everyone feels it. Let's make this clear. It's reactive. It's about trying to win in someone else's arena. They throw shade, you throw it back. They raise their voice, you raise yours. They insult, you insult harder. But all of that, it's exhausting. It's draining. And worst of all, it's predictable. They know how you'll react, because you always do. You're stuck in their game, and they're holding the dice. But silence? Silence breaks the game. It flips the board. It tears up the script. It takes everything they thought they understood about you and sets it on fire. Because silence is self-control, and that's the final level, the final boss of personal evolution. Anyone can shout. Not everyone can wait quietly with fire in their chest, with thunder in their bones, someone steps to you, disrespects you, mocks you, spreads lies, challenges you in front of others. They want a show. They want a reaction. You stare, say nothing, smile, maybe, then walk away. You don't lose power in that moment. You absorb it. Because now you're unforgettable. Not because you reacted, but because you didn't. That's what silence does. It lingers, it echoes, it haunts, because when people don't know what you're thinking, they begin to think everything. They overanalyze your calm, they question your motives, they replay every second, wondering what it meant. And in the process, they expose their own instability. You're calm, they're chaotic. You're composed, they're cracking. And that's when you win, not in the argument, not in the shouting match, but in the space you didn't fill with words, and left them drowning in their own noise. Speaking your truth is always brave. No, it's not. Sometimes it's brave, but other times, it's desperate. It's an emotional bleed-out. It's a reaction, not a response. Real strength is knowing when not to speak, when not to defend, when to let your silence say everything they aren't prepared to hear. The strongest men and women in this world, they speak last, if at all. They understand that confrontation doesn't always require noise. Sometimes it requires presence. Sometimes it requires detachment. Sometimes it requires the discipline to do nothing. And that nothing. It's not emptiness. It's not passivity. It's not weakness. It's the most powerful something they've ever experienced. Let's break it down. Loud is temporary. It flashes, then fades. It shakes the moment, but not the memory. Silence is permanent. It carves its weight into the air. It stays in the room even after you've walked out. It makes them remember you, without recalling a single word you said. You can fight your way to respect, or you can walk your way to fear, and fear, not the cruel kind, but the reverent kind, will always outlast loud applause or forced admiration, because people don't respect noise. They remember stillness. They remember the one who didn't flinch, who didn't rise to the bait, who didn't argue to win, because they had nothing left to prove. So the next time they try to bait you, to lure you into the chaos, to pull you into another confrontation, remember this: the moment you react, they win. The moment you go silent, they fear. You're not playing their game anymore. You've graduated from volume. You've evolved past confrontation. Now, you let your silence burn colder than any word ever could, and they'll feel that burn, not in their ears, but in their pride. There comes a moment in your journey, the turning point, where you stop chasing respect. Not because you no longer want it, but because you finally realize the truth. People don't owe you anything. Not respect, not loyalty, not kindness, not understanding. And that truth, it doesn't break you. It builds you. Because once you stop needing their approval, you become untouchable. Let that sink in. They don't owe you respect. And you don't need it. That's your edge. That's the shift. That's where your real power begins. All your life, you've been conditioned to earn acceptance, be likable, be agreeable, be humble, be relatable, play the part. You thought if you just worked hard enough, if you were just kind enough, patient enough, good enough, eventually the world would clap for you. But here's the bitter truth. They only clap for you when you no longer care about the applause. They only admire you once you stop chasing them. They only respect you once you stop needing them. Because people sense need, and they exploit it. The moment you walk into a room hoping to be accepted, you hand over your power. You walk in saying, "Please like me. Please validate me. Please tell me I matter." And they feel it. They see the hunger in your eyes, the tension in your posture, the hesitation in your voice, and they use it. Not always maliciously, but instinctively. Because people fear what they can't control, and they're drawn to what they can. So if you walk into a room already needing them, you've already lost the game. But when you walk in cold, calm, whole, complete, with zero expectations, zero emotional dependency, zero hunger for attention, now the game changes. Now you're the one with leverage, because the person who doesn't care if they're accepted is the one who commands the room. No one respects the man who needs it. You're feared the moment you no longer require approval. Think about that for a second. Respect that's begged for is never real. It's performative. It's conditional. It can be taken back the moment you stop playing the part they want you to play. But the moment you decide, "I'm not here to be liked. I don't care if they understand me. Their opinions of me are not my concern." It doesn't mean you don't feel. It means your feelings are no longer up for auction. It means you're no longer on sale to the highest bidder of temporary attention. You see, rejection isn't failure. It's freedom. Because every person who walks away, every person who disrespects you, every person who ignores your worth, they're just removing themselves from the table where they were never meant to sit. Let them go. Stop begging people to stay. Stop chasing people to see your value. Stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Rejection isn't a wall. It's a mirror. And what you see in it will define your power. If you see someone unworthy, you'll shrink. If you see someone broken, you'll chase validation. But if you see someone complete without them, if you see someone who doesn't need the seat at their table, you'll build your own. And your silence will speak for you. You see, when you stop reacting to rejection, when you stop flinching every time someone doesn't text back, doesn't support you, doesn't clap for you, you become something they don't know how to handle. You become whole without them. That's terrifying, not to you, but to them, because they want to believe you need their acceptance. They want to believe they have emotional leverage over you. And when they realize they don't, they crumble. You don't have to shout it. You don't have to announce your detachment. Let them see it. Let them feel it, in the way you don't respond, in the way you don't explain, in the way you don't chase closure or conversation or permission. You've outgrown the room. You've outgrown the need. You're not seeking respect anymore. You've become someone who commands it silently, so let rejection come. Welcome it. Let the fake ones fall away. Let the silence do its work. And in the aftermath, you'll realize every rejection was a redirection. Every no made room for a better yes. Every betrayal was a blessing in armor, and the most powerful version of you was hiding behind the one who needed their approval. Now you don't need it. Now you're free. Now they fear you, because they can no longer control you. There's a moment in silence where it stops being uncomfortable for you and starts becoming unbearable for them. At first, they think you're playing a game. They think your stillness is temporary, that your silence is just a phase. They smirk. They shrug. They wait for you to break. They expect you to return, to apologize, to explain, to react, but you don't. And every second that passes, their confidence begins to crack, because silence, when mastered, they scroll your page but don't see your name. They check your story but it's blank. They see you walk past them, unbothered, unreadable, and suddenly it hits them. They can't get to you anymore. And that realization, it's like a storm hitting glass, sudden, violent, unforgiving, because they've built their confidence on one simple thing: control. And now, that control is gone. They can't reach you through guilt. They can't provoke you with silence. They can't manipulate your emotions, your words, your energy. You've gone dark, gone cold, gone silent. Not out of pain, but out of power. And that's what breaks them. Let's go deeper. You ever see someone unravel in real time? They're laughing louder now, louder than they need to. They're making jokes about you, hoping someone laughs with them. They're checking your profile, again and again, hoping you've noticed. But you haven't. You're gone, not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, energetically. You've left the building. And what's worse, you left without saying goodbye. There were no last words, no final argument, no drama, just stillness, just absence. And the mind, their mind, can't process that, because humans don't fear confrontation. They fear the unknown. They fear what they can't label, what they can't fix, what they can't read. And you've become unreadable. They play out conversations that never happened. They rehearse apologies they'll never give. They replay every moment, trying to find the line where they lost you. But it's too late. Because you didn't slam the door. You removed the door entirely. You didn't burn bridges. You disappeared from the map. And now they're trapped in the wreckage of their own ego, wondering how they lost access to something they never valued until it was gone. The more you ignore them, the more desperate they become, because rejection doesn't just sting, it exposes. It peels back the fake confidence, the performance, the control, and it shows them their true self, a fragile ego, terrified of your silence. And then it happens. The mask slips. You see them one day. The laugh is gone. The fake confidence, shattered. Their posture is different. Their tone is off. Because they can't pretend anymore. They can't hold up the illusion. Your silence has lasted too long, and they finally realized the truth. They never had power over you. They only had access. And now that access is gone. Because this version of you doesn't beg for respect. This version doesn't explain their silence. This version doesn't open the door once it's been shut. You let them live with what they did. You let them sit with what they said. And the worst part, you never raised your voice. You never made a scene. You just became someone they could never reach again. That breaks them. You see, silence doesn't just end relationships. It creates legends. They talk about you, even now. Especially now. Because they don't understand how you walked away without a trace. They don't know how you stayed calm while they unraveled. They don't know how you transformed into someone who no longer reacts. Because nothing outside of you has power anymore. And when they break, you don't celebrate, you don't retaliate, you don't post about it. You do what you've always done. You remain still. You remain focused. You remain silent. Because by the time they realize what they lost, you've already become something greater, something distant, something divine, untouchable, unreachable, unbothered. That's when they break. And that's when you rise. There comes a point where you stop fighting battles. You don't argue anymore. You don't chase apologies. You don't flinch when people misjudge you. You don't rise to bait. You don't play their games. You just become something else. The old you. The one who begged to be seen. The one who explained his pain. The one who defended himself to people who already chose not to understand. He's gone, buried, replaced. By what? By a version of you they'll never see coming and never see through. You no longer react, not because you're numb, but because you're focused. You no longer explain, not because you have no answers, but because they don't deserve them. You no longer speak, not because you're out of words, but because your silence now says more than your voice ever could. You're not seeking revenge anymore. You've become the consequence, the walking reminder that they mishandled something powerful, the living echo of a lesson they never wanted to learn. The very silence they used to mock now wraps around them like a noose of regret. You're not here to prove anything. You're not here to win them back. You're not here to show them you've changed. You've changed for yourself, not to impress them, not to spite them, not to get their attention. You changed because evolution was survival, and silence was your first breath in that rebirth. There's a different kind of strength now living in your chest, not the loud, aggressive, look-at-me kind, but the calm, collected, composed energy of crystal clear about who you are, crystal clear about who deserves access. crystal clear about where you're going and who won't be coming with you. You used to think transformation would look like gold chains, loud victories, standing on top of a stage screaming, "I made it." But now you know, the real transformation, it's invisible. It's when you stop caring who claps. It's when you stop giving people chances to disrespect you twice. It's when you walk away, not in rage, but in peace. Not because you're bitter, but because you're finally awake. You don't take things personally anymore, not because they didn't hurt, but because you've grown beyond the need to be understood. You know who you are, and more importantly, you know who you're not. You're not the person who begs, not the person who explains, not the one trying to be liked in rooms that never deserved your presence. You've outgrown the act. You've outgrown the need. You've outgrown them. And now you move different. Now you enter silently. Now you leave a room, and they're still talking about you after you're gone, not because you said something loud, but because you carried weight, and that weight was built in stillness. They don't get it. They don't understand how someone so soft became so distant, how someone so kind became so cold, how someone so giving learned how to withhold. But they don't need to understand, because this isn't for them. This is for you. The one who stayed quiet while others spoke over you. The one who stayed loyal to people who only came around when it was convenient. The one who suffered in silence, broke in silence, and rebuilt in silence. And now, you shine in that same silence, because silence was never the absence of strength. It was the source of it. You carry yourself differently now, not arrogantly, but deliberately. Your words are fewer, but they land heavier. Your presence is quieter, but it demands more attention. Your boundaries are tighter, but they protect something sacred now, you. You're not afraid to be misunderstood. You're not afraid to be alone. You're not afraid of losing anyone who doesn't respect your silence. You're past that stage. Now, you're not trying to be invited. You're not trying to be included. You've become the table. And only those who come correct will be allowed to sit. So when they look at you now, the ones who once dismissed you, mocked you, doubted you, they won't recognize you. You'll be unbothered, unreachable, unapologetic, because you no longer need to be seen. You just need to be felt. And trust me, they'll feel you. In every room, in every conversation, in every quiet moment, when your name sits heavy in their throat but never passes their lips. They'll feel what they lost. They'll feel what they took for granted. And they'll feel it in the worst way. In silence, because by the time they realize who you've become, you'll be too far ahead, too focused, too elevated. You didn't just evolve. You transformed. You became the storm they never saw coming, the silence they'll never forget, the presence they'll never be able to replace. Let them fear your presence, because they'll never understand your silence. So here we are. The words are fading. The fire's still burning. But the noise is gone, because now you understand something most people will never grasp. You don't need to be heard to be remembered. You don't need to scream to shake the room. You don't need to react to prove you're powerful. The most dangerous ones are always the quietest, the most respected, unapologetically misunderstood, because they know silence isn't an absence, it's a force. You've walked the path from trying to explain yourself to letting them believe whatever helped them sleep at night, from needing to be included to building your own table and watching who dares approach it now, from chasing closure to realizing silence was the only closure you ever needed. You've mastered stillness. You've learned to weaponize absence. You've turned your silence into a presence they can no longer ignore. And in that transformation, you've become what they never expected. Unreadable, unshakable, unforgettable. They'll talk about you, but never to you. They'll wonder where you went, but never ask why you left. Because deep down, they know. They know they lost access to something rare, something sacred, something they didn't value until it slipped out of reach, quietly, permanently. That's the final power of silence. You don't have to announce your departure. Your absence will echo louder than your presence ever did. So from here on out, carry it with you. Carry it in your walk, in your posture, in your stillness. Let your presence speak before you do. Let your silence walk 2 steps ahead of you, clearing paths and commanding respect. Let people feel the tension of what you don't say and build their own fear inside the gaps. Because that's the edge. That's what separates you from them. They perform. You observe. They shout. You study. They chase. You attract. You've become the storm that never announces itself. You don't strike with thunder. You move in pressure. And when you leave a silence so loud they hear it long after you're gone. So don't go back. Don't soften. Don't explain. Don't let them rewrite your story with their words. Write it in silence, in discipline, in energy that can't be mimicked. Let your evolution be invisible. Let your power be misunderstood. Let your calm be terrifying. You're not who you were. You're not what they thought. You're not the version they boxed up and labeled. You've become something else entirely. A mystery, a force, a presence they can feel, but never hold again. And that's the legacy. Not to be remembered for what you said, but for how you made the room feel when you said nothing at all. Not to be quoted, but to be felt. And that's the final truth. Your silence was never the end of the story. It was just the beginning of your reign.